We go. So the question today is, why in the world would anybody want to publish their own book? Nick, welcome to Reality Coaching for Writers. And Diana's going to give us our tagline.
Where we offer no fluff, just the real stuff to help you succeed.
So Nick, you decided to write a book, and you decided to publish a book, and just introduce yourself a little bit to the audience so they'll know who you are and where you're coming from.
So I'm Nick Honorkamp. I pastored a church for 23 years, and now I work for a large Christian nonprofit engaging pastors and churches for volunteers and donations. And recently, over the last year, I've written a book that I've decided to self-publish, and that's the journey I'm on right now.
What led you to decide to go that route, the do-it-yourself publishing route?
Well, one, I think that the stigma is very few people ever get published. You can write a book and it never get picked up, never get published. And if you do, you lose all control over your product. And I wanted the control as much as anything. Number two, Diana here has been a friend for a long time, has taught me a lot of stuff. She was the editor on this book. And I felt it was more attainable because I knew somebody who has done it, somebody who knew the ins and outs. And what she took me to a certain point, and then she brought you into the conversation. Between the two of you, I felt it was very easy to go that route and have complete control over my own product, and that I could get it done in a timely manner.
Okay. So any along the process, we talked a little bit about this before we came on the air, but the publication process itself, what surprised you about that part of the journey?
Ooh. Well, first of all, let me just say, the writing is not the hard part. It's the rewriting, the editing, the proofreading, the layout, the cover design, all the other stuff that us mortals out here don't know. There's no school, there's no training. And so when Diane said you need to get a mentor that can coach you through all this, I was shocked at how many details, at least 100 details that have to be done right, well, and in a timely order to pull off the publication. They're not complicated, they're not difficult, but if you don't know them, they're impossible. And so for me, and I appreciate you because you said, hey, if you're going to do more than one book, let me teach you how to do this so that you'll always know how to do it. And you did great coaching on that. For me, publishing your own book is more complicated than you know, but it's easy once you have the right steps. That's what I would tell anybody. And I would tell them not to be afraid to publish your own book. If you have confidence in it, if you have some other things you want to do with your book other than to sell it to the world, and if you have somebody that could guide you and direct you.
Okay. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to probably get in trouble, regret saying it, but your comment about the writing was not the hard part. It's one of the things I kind of use at Writers Conference. I'll say it's kind of like making a baby. It's not that hard, and it can be a lot of fun. And you think that was the work, and it's just, it's not the work. You know, what comes after that's the work.
Yeah. I had a gentleman who challenged me to write this book. I was having a conversation with him about forgiveness, and he says, you were a pastor, give me your advice on this. And he told me a story, and I gave him some advice. And he said, you need to write a book about that. And I've never thought I was a forgiveness expert or whatever. Then he sent me a book called How to Write a Book in 90 Days. And it was just a book that gave you one idea. And the one idea was sit down and write for 90 days. Get everything out you want to get out and just write for 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, just stop. And that was by far the easiest part. I mean, it really was. It was giving it to Diana, her suggesting edits and changing the way I present things and rewriting. The hard work is not getting it out of you, but getting it prepared for someone else to consume. That's the hard part, that you're writing it for the audience, for your reader, not for you. And I think that helped me when Diana sort of shifted me that direction. The easy part's writing, the hard part is making sure that your audience can read it without it being a big, hard obstacle to chew on.
Hey, Diana, do you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I so appreciated working with you, Nick, because you have such a teachable spirit, and our roles were reversed. Nick has been was my pastor for 10 years. And so for our roles to be switched, it was at first a little daunting for me, but we are brother and sister in Christ. So that and knowing one another and having sat under your voice, I knew that I could, I wouldn't mess with that voice, because that voice was a wonderful voice. And so having that in mind, though, just to have you be teachable and realize that your reader is the primary goal, so many people aren't willing to make those changes.
Wow.
And it makes it really hard for us when we have to come again and again to help them understand that they know in their head what they intend the reader to get, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you have on paper. And so being able to have those conversations like we were able to, Nick, is why your book is the beautiful book that it is now, that I'm so proud to recommend to my friends, because and couldn't wait to, because it's that you did adjust and make those changes to make it valuable to your reader. And I'm anxious to hear what your friend would say. Has he seen it yet, the guy that first inspired you to write it?
Absolutely. Sterling's the one that encouraged me to write it. He read it before it came out, and he's been helping me with some stuff on my personal website, and he's very excited about it, and I appreciate that support. The other thing, Diana, is I was with a guy yesterday who's just started reading the book, and he read it out loud to his wife the night before, read a couple chapters, and she says, gosh, I can so hear Nick Honorkamp's voice as you're reading that. And that was my number one fear, is if I was going to take my book, give it to strangers, give it to friends like you, Diana, you would give it back and it wouldn't sound like me at all. And when he said that to me yesterday, I was so proud, and I really appreciate the work you did to clean up the things. Like, I learned 2 fatal flaws I have in writing: RUE, resist the urge to explain, and I don't know how to use a comma, evidently. And so these 2 things, but you know, working with somebody and seeing that, you're like, wow, these things are stumbling blocks that the reader doesn't have to, they can put your book down. They don't have to finish it. They don't have to recommend it. You have to make it easy for the reader. And the fact you were able to clean up the technical pieces while leaving my voice in there meant the world to me. And it makes me encouraged to write another one.
Yay, good.
Yes, you know, Nick, when you you had me at the word, I don't know how to use a comma, because that's mine, right? And I was sitting there thinking, oh man, that's like almost every pastor I've ever heard. Once they start a sermon, they don't take a breath. I don't know how you guys get up there and go for 20 minutes without ever taking a breath at all. We can't write the stuff down that fast, but y'all, you know, so yeah, it makes perfect sense. So,
well, and just a note, Eddie, let me just say one more thing. When someone is a speaker, it takes an adjustment to translate that into reading material, because a speaker has voice inflection to get their point across. They have gestures. They have other ways of translating what they want to say to the listener. Whereas when it's in written form, we don't have your inflection of voice. We don't have those things. So it has to be a real precise choosing of words to be able to translate to your reader. So it is that adjustment, you know, it takes a little finessing.
Can I comment on that for a second?
Please. Yeah.
I have a big stage presence. And so, I'm an extrovert. I like to communicate. And so because of those skills, I've not developed my writing skills. And so in this process, I've had to be vulnerable and say, you know, I would preach sermon series, and Diana would come up to me afterwards and say, that should be a book. You should write a book about that. You should put that material in a book. Preaching material in an oral tradition is way different than writing. And I don't have my personality, my charm, my inflection, or all those other skills. when you write, you have to be vulnerable that your writing skills have to keep their attention. And that's the piece that Diana kept hammering on is the writing has to carry its own. It has to stand on its own. And so for the speakers out there, hey, write your books. You probably got lots of material. Yes, write your books, but it's a different discipline and you're not the expert in this field and you need to learn.
Kind of reminds me a little bit in the reverse of Paul. I forgot where I was reading yesterday, Romans, Corinthians, I don't know, one of them.
Yeah.
It's the one where he goes, okay, I know I'm not much of a presence when I'm there with you. I look kind of small and diminutive and everything, and people go like, this is the guy, this is him, but my words carry weight. And so it's kind of the reverse that you're having to aim for as a pastor writer, that reverse.
Yeah.
And I'll also say this is, Nick, when Diana and I go to conferences in years past, sitting across from somebody like you was always one of those things that was just really weird for me, and I think probably for Diana too, because we knew if it was a pastor, and usually it was a male, and if they're at a writers' conference in the middle of the week, they're probably this is their church work, right? So they're leading a congregation, maybe a large congregation. They've got a lot of people looking up to them, and they're coming to us for advice. They're being vulnerable, and that's it. And I only say that because it's really a weird dynamic within the body of Christ, and yet it's also what Jesus said, which is nobody's any better than the next guy. But it still just made it really tough to carry that mantle. It's hard for us to say no to a pastor, I guess is what I'm saying. It really is.
Well, and I would say I felt that with Diana in the first edit. When she sent me back the first edits, there was a little bit of anxiety about how I would respond to that. He is the expert in this field. Just like the Bible says, there are many parts of one body and they all have value. And that I felt her gently trying to lead into her expertise, but I want to be good at this. And I knew Diane had my interest at heart. And so it took a little bit of role reversal, like she mentioned a minute ago, but she found her stride and she said, this is what I need you to do. And I listened and I learned a ton from that. But you're exactly right. We're used to be on the stage. We're used to be the one speaking. We're used to being the expert in the room. And because we represent the Lord, sometimes there's that weird hero worship, weird, whatever that is, submission to authority, honoring God's man, whatever. And to come to you guys and to submit that content and you honor it and value it, but be willing to clean it up was just a real important part of the process that I don't think most people are ready for or understand what's going to be asked of them once they get in the process.
So switching gears a little bit. So let's talk a little bit about the actual logistics of the production process itself. We sent you to a design team for them to design, and we sent you to cover designs. What did you learn from that, and what would you have done differently had you known now what you know then? What you know now, what you didn't know then?
Well, first of all, one of the things that I really respected about your mentoring program is that you gave me 3 or 5 options on each thing to be able to choose for cover art or to choose from the interior layout. And I got to choose my own folks, my own proofreaders. One of the 5 of the proofreaders was my favorite, and she's a go-to. I've kept her on my list. I'm going to use her again. But I think that understanding the complexity of the cover art, the size of the book, how many pages, what the layout needs to look like on the inside, and it's a lot more complicated than I thought to actually get it. It's not difficult. It's just there's some steps that have to be taken, and I don't think anybody should be doing this by themselves. There's just too many places for a mistake. Turn some stuff over to professionals, get it done well, and get it done right. And I would say there's too many folks, I think, that are waiting for the perfect product before they put something out there. And one of the things I've realized is in the book that I did, the font size is smaller than I wanted. All I did is reach back out to the font folks and say, hey, in the next edition, could you just go ahead and fix the font size? They did. We put it back out there. Now, if people bought it from Amazon, it's a better product than the first product. It's okay. Just improve as you go along. Yeah. Don't be afraid. Jump in there, but listen to the experts. They've done this before.
Yeah, that's one of the the dings that was originally against the self-publishing industry, what it was announced, Diana, 6, 7, 8 years ago with Create Space and Kindle and all that starting up was the print on demand book. It used to be the publishers had to go offset press, and the big publishers still do. They go offset press and they're going to print 5,000 the first run. And then if it sells out, they'll print maybe 5,000 or 3,000 the next month. That's the traditional model. Print on demand is one book at a time, right? Yep. And so they would go, well, the quality is not going to be good. And I go, yes, but if there's a mistake, you can fix it. And the next version is going to be perfect. It's going to be perfect. And if you do offset, you get that one mistake, it sits there forever. It takes forever for that one mistake to get taken out of the book. Let's talk a little bit about the cover design. So that's usually where authors are really passionate about how they want their cover to look. How did you and the cover design team work together on that?
So Eddie, I don't know if you remember our first phone call. You asked me a couple of questions and I said, I don't care about cover design. I don't care what it looks like. And you gently said, well, sir, there's 5 things that sell a book. And then you listed the 5 things: the title, subtitle, the cover, the price, the back cover. You listed them out for me. And I took notes in my car as I was sitting there talking to you. And I thought maybe I should care. And so what I ended up doing is I picked one of the people that you had recommended to me, and she sent me a questionnaire. It was about 20 questions. What's your favorite color? What mood do you want to invoke? And she went through this whole list of who are you trying to reach? Who's your target demographics? My answer to those 20 questions was, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so I couldn't respond to her for a week because I didn't know. And how is she going to design a cover for me when I don't even know what I want? So finally, I had to go back and I had to sit down and I had to start answering all those questions and sort through some stuff. And don't you know, Hannah nailed it on the very first try. She sent me this cover and I said, I'm in love, not just with this cover, but these are now the colors of my brand. I'm going to put this on my website. These are my colors now. She nailed it so well, but it's because she's been doing this a while and knew the 20 questions she needed to ask to pull that out of the author's heart, because I didn't have the answers for any of them.
I'm so glad you chose Hannah.
Yeah, yeah, I want to take a little rabbit trail about that because I don't know that people have ever heard of Hannah, and we're not going to give her last name here on the show. We'll give the link on the episode. But so the backstory on Hannah is the last Blue Ridge conference. I think the last Blue Ridge conference I went to. I wasn't even at this point. I think Diana had sold LPC, and I was just kind of hanging around. I was just going up there hanging around with my writer friends. And at the night that evening on Wednesday night, they have the award ceremony. And people go back and eat ice cream, and so we're all just hanging around outside eating ice cream and doing that. And Mary Dimon came up to me and she said, "There's somebody you need to meet," because she knew I was coaching authors, still coaching authors. You need to meet this girl. So she took me over to Hannah, and Hannah's sitting there, and she said, "Hannah, pull up some of your cover designs. I want you to show them to Eddie." So she started pulling them up and started flipping through, and I'm looking at, well, that's great, and that is wonderful. That's wonderful. That's wonderful, And Mary said, and she does this regular. This is what she does. She writes and she does this. And I said, well, I'd love to hire you, but we probably can't afford you. And Mary said, oh, yes, you can. And so since then, Hannah's raised her prices some, but there is probably nobody else in the industry of a greater value as far as cover design than her. And the cool thing about Hannah, tell them about her writing side of things.
Well, I don't know if I'll get it all right, Eddie, but she's published now. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, she's published. She wins awards.
Yeah, I mean, we have seen her just grow, and I feel that is part of the casting her bread upon the water and it coming back to her, because she has invested in people, and the blessings now are coming her way, and it's really the fruit. She's really seeing the fruit through her writing.
And I wanted to get that out there because I keep telling my clients all the time, grab her while you can, because she will not last. I mean, she's making it on the tour, and when she's on the tour, you can't touch her again. So let's talk a little bit, wrap it up, and talk a little bit about marketing, because right before we came on, you said you were talking about how the marketing kind of blew you away, and you weren't quite prepared for that. So maybe give the listeners an idea of how you would plan to launch your book and what you learned along the way and what it's doing now.
So a couple of things. When I wrote the book, I was not anticipating doing any kind of professional marketing. Mainly, I was going to sell it through my own website so that I knew who the people were that buying it, might be able to offer them a secondary service at some point. I thought I'd sell mostly to family and friends, and I would just mention something on social media. And then when I got in a relationship with you, you were like, sure, go do all that stuff. But you want people other than your family and friends to be able to buy that book. And so we need to put it where it can be accessible to anybody. And so I've been doing this dual piece where I've been selling some books through my personal website. And one of the things about marketing is every time I post a picture on Facebook about my book, I sell a bunch of copies. And I feel awkward because I don't know how often I should do that, but it works. And every time I put it out there, somebody's like, oh, I forgot, I need to go ahead and buy that. But then, working with you, Eddie, then trying to think through keywords and what people might be searching for when they're looking for a book. And there's another author that has a book similar to mine out who's much bigger than me right now, and wondering if I would ever be found, and working with you and finding that people are buying the book that I don't know who they are. I've never met them before, because we were able to position it out there where people could find it. I think the marketing is one of the key things. You can have an excellent book, but if you can't get it in front of the people that want to buy your book or need what you're trying to provide, then the book just sits there on the shelf. And I really appreciate some of the things you've taught me about the marketing side and what you're doing on the Amazon side. And I'm continuing to do some of the things that I'm doing on my personal side, and both seem to be working, and I'm excited about that. But it's one of those things where you can go through the whole process, and if you don't do the marketing piece you need to do, it doesn't get in the hands of the people you're trying to reach.
Yeah, that is true, and you're actually one of the anomalies of this business. Most of the authors want their books to sell really well on Amazon. They come at it, they just want to go gangbusters, and they don't want to sell it just to their family. There's a piece about the Amazon thing that I think sometimes maybe Diana and I probably don't talk about this as often as we should, and that Amazon is in the business of selling products and making money. That's their bottom line. They want to sell product, and so the more a product sells, the more they're going to push the product. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of those, it's part of the formula for Amazon. If you've got a book on Amazon and people aren't buying it, if you're not selling it up through Amazon, if they're not taking orders through Amazon, then those Amazon ads that we run, for your book don't have much impact, because Amazon's looking at it and going, if I run an ad for Nick and he's not selling the book now, it's going to cost me a lot of money. I'm going to have to charge him a lot of money to get somebody interested in his book. So the flip side is, the more orders you get through Amazon, the more Amazon goes, hey, instead of charging him $1 or 50 cents, I'll charge 25 cents because we're going to sell a bunch of his books along the way. That is part of their back end formula. And so if you're thinking about selling the book through Amazon, you need to drive some sales to Amazon to make sure that book is selling.
Well, and Eddie, the one thing that you helped me with is the process of getting reviews so that you can get it in front of the right people. And I didn't see the value of that or understand the value of that you've got to help yourself with the marketing. You don't just buy an ad and throw it out there and hope somebody sees it. There's a set process you walked me through. Get some people to buy it, get some people to put reviews up there. Then we'll put some ads out there. We'll sell some books. And I just wasn't aware of how important the reviews were. So I'm ready to throw it out there to the world, but it's like throwing a hook out there with no bait on it.
Well, that's a good word picture. Yeah, that is.
And it seems to me like, Nick, you should be in a position where you could encourage people to go and post reviews, even if they don't buy your book. They could say almost anything about you on Amazon and have a really fun time doing it, and you know what I'm saying? They can do that.
I was scared to get reviews. I was like, what if 3 of them are bad? What if, And so you're like, get to me these reviews. And I was like, but I don't know that I'm ready to hear the critique yet. And so that's a part that every author has. You guys know better than me, but it's a part that I was really a little bit nervous about what people would say.
Yeah, and maybe we'll close with this because we're running up on time. I guess what I would say is, because I say this, Diana and I say this a lot to authors. If you feel called to write a book, and wherever that nudge comes from, first make sure that the nudge is a legitimate nudge and it's not one built on pride, but it's an actual calling, a nudge from the Spirit. And in your case, you know, in theory, you should be well equipped to be able to speak the words Lord's to people, both in verbally and in writing. If you do that, if you're called, you better be prepared to give it as much life as you can, because it is a calling. And I think this is the way I explain it to authors is, he didn't tell us to put it under a bushel. He didn't tell us to go into a room and keep quiet about it. If he's giving you his words, we better be out there doing all we can to make sure as many people can find, especially your book, Nick, about forgiveness and forgiving yourself. Goodness, I mean, we live in a culture where, I hate to say it, but people are killing themselves because they cannot forgive themselves.
Right. It's true.
Diana, what closing thoughts do you have?
Well, Nick, hold your book up one more time, and we're going to put the link in our description box. But I just, I love the cover. I love all that you're doing. And I just think, thank you, Nick, for coming on and just sharing so clearly, just like you always did. You have a gift for putting the cookies on the bottom shelf for us all. And I think so many are going to be helped because the one thing you kept saying is you can't do what you don't know, you know, and that's what Eddie and I do, why we do what we do. It's because we want to clear the path so others can run their race and run it more effectively. And I'm just excited that your book is out there. And I've been one of your cheerleaders and I'll continue to be, but just thank you for coming out with your busy schedule and joining us today, just to be able to help other people. Like you said, I encourage them to get their words down and share what God's put on their hearts. So thanks so much.
It's a joy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, Dave.
Have a good week, everybody.